Well, Nick Collier here, and we've got an interesting little project coming up on the line. One of my neighbors actually lives about a mile away, is a farmer, and we ended up connecting up through Craigslist of all things, and he said, "Hey, can you make me some farm implements?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure, of course." So he brought me this piece over, and it's like, probably twice as heavy as he needed. But he got it at a really good deal in Lodi, which is about 100 miles south of here. And but the crossbar is not long enough. He wants it to be about 60 inches for the whole length. So we got to take the crossbar out, and we got to put another crossbar in here, or it's actually called the toolbar. And this is solid stock here, and we're going to put in, this is 2.5-inch solid stock, and we're going to put 2-inch tubing in with 1/4-inch walls. Some very stout material. In fact, we can kind of look at it over here. You can see that's pretty heavy-duty stuff. It's going to do anything that he needs to do on this. And the reason, I don't know why they use solid stock here, but maybe they were pulling a big, long train of discs or something like that. So anyhow, we're going to take this bar stock out, put this material in, and then build 3 different implements for his farm. So, oh, and the best part of all, this guy's an organic farmer, and he a young guy. And it turns out that we have a bunch of young farmers in our area here. They get small pieces of land and then just farm the heck out of it, and they seem to be doing okay, which is very exciting. Anyhow, so I'm trading him for probably a couple of summers worth of vegetables and whatever else that he grows. I think he has chickens and pigs too. So anyhow, so I'm going to step you in a little closer onto this piece here, okay, and you can kind of see it, the little farm implement. Basically, this triangular piece goes on the back of his tractor. This connects up to the main part of the tractor, and then 2 little triple clamp sort of posts hang on to the rest of it, and this thing drags along behind the tractor. Now, one of the things that he wants me to make, and we're going to go over to here, is this piece of the tool hanger, or I can't remember what it was called. Anyhow, it's the 2-inch bar stock, and he wants it to be 60 inches long, and he wanted another part out here so he could connect up other tools to it at the same time, so that he's plowing and maybe rotating the stock or the earth at the same time. So we went and got a 20-foot length of material. We've cut our lengths, and if you can see, we're going to come back to here. You can see that this goes in not as a square, but as a diamond shape. So all of the shapes have to be cut so that they weld together in a diamond shape. And this is not a big deal, but it still had a little bit of a effort to it. And you'll be able to see here, the piece comes up, and then the other piece connects into that. Something like that. Whoops. That's a heavy piece of steel, so we won't be messing with it too much. Anyhow, so I've cut the pieces at a 45. I've got the welds prepped for it, and we're going to come back in probably later today and go ahead and tack weld these together, square them up, make sure all my corners are square and everything's square to itself, and then go ahead and probably stick weld this together, because this is the piece that's going to take the beating. Everything else, well, actually everything else will take a beating too, but this is the piece that'll you know, he'll put 3 or 4 tools on this at the same time, so it's going to need to be really stout. So we'll come in and stick weld that, and that'll give us a lot of strength. So for the moment, there we are. We're going to trade for a bunch of vegetables, and this guy really comes up with some great stuff. And this is Nick Collier. Hang out with me. We'll have some fun. Okay, we've got our angles cut, and now we need to chamfer this edge so that we can get a good penetration in the welding. So hang in there with me. Let's chamfer the edge, and we'll go from there. All right, we took about a third of the metal off here on the outside edges, and so we've got a nice flat surface to push up against, and then we'll have a fairly nice V to run a bead into. So I'm going to do the other side, and I think I'll just save your ears and turn you off. We've got all of our corners cut and our edges chamfered, so we get a nice weld, good penetration on the weld. But if you look close, and this happens sometimes because I've got a very old bandsaw, is we're sitting at 90 degrees right here, and there's a gap out here. Dang. So if I'd have cut that just a couple of degrees wider, everything would have been good. But hey, it is what it is, and the cool thing about welding is it doesn't really matter that much. You can come back and fill that and not ever even see it. So let's pull back. We've got the full 60 inches long and 16 inches wide on the inside. So there's a 16-inch hole. So I think what we're going to do now, and I cut myself a whole bunch of little 45-degree wedges here so I could butt them up to the pieces so that I could get that diamond shape. So now what we're going to do is just go ahead and set up everything and get it all right, and then we'll tack each corner and get that set up, and maybe have to tweak it a little bit here and there because sometimes tacking will pull it one way or the other. And once we get it in place, then we'll go ahead and weld the whole thing. So that looks pretty good there, and we're sitting right at, no, we're a little off, but that's not bad. Not a bad thing. Come back. There we go. Degrees. That's pretty much right on the money. We just need to bring it closer. I think it wants to go down a bit. No, it doesn't look like it. Just a little bit off. How are we doing for our How are we doing for our 16 inches? Ooh, right on the money. Okay, we got a pretty good sized gap over here. You can't quite see it. Let me bring you around to it. Pretty good sized gap right here, but I think we're going to be okay. I mean, you know, and also there's a height difference here. So I think what I'm going to do is slide a couple of washers underneath here to get myself squared up a bit. And turns out I got a bunch of these little fender washers. and they will work just fine. Yeah, that's better. That gets us nice and even up on top here. In fact, it actually may be a little high, so I'm going to take one of those fender washers out. And that looks good. Back to a 90. Yes. Now let's go back up to the other end, and I'm just going to walk you over there. And here you get a good example of the chamfer that got put on the end of that. And it's basically, there's the original cut, and then the chamfer kind of comes back. So I've got the original cut to kind of butt up against. Of course, it turns out the cut was off, so we're not going to probably butt up it more than a little bit. Okay, we're going to start right in here. I'm going to probably just weld the very tip here because it's going to take a lot of welding anyhow, and that'll keep everything from torquing one way or the other, and it'll keep it right centered. And then also I can torque it if things are out just a little bit. Whereas if I welded it right here, it would be a lot more harder to torque. We're going to use some 60-13 rod here. And I think I'm using 1/8 inch, which is pretty small rod. But first, I don't have any good 16-13 larger rod. And the other thing is that you get a little more control when you use the small rod. At least that's what I find. Okay, we're going to go right to here. Let's bring it in. Then I just keep welding until I fill the gap. We'll do the same over here. It's almost like spot welding. No, it's not very strong, but it doesn't need to be. We're just tacking this. Okay, we got all our corners welded. Now comes the moment of truth. We torqued a little bit. Okay, well that's not too bad. Yeah. How, I don't know, but we did. Let's see what we got up here. And up here it's almost on the money. So, just a little bit out. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to clamp one end of this to the table, and then we'll just grab the other. We'll clamp this end to the table, and then we'll just grab that end there and kind of pull it this way a little bit, and I think it'll straighten the torque out. Okay, so I've split this weld here because we're just slightly off, and I think what I'm going to do is come in and grind out the interior of this. If you'll notice, this kind of bottoms out and leaves a pretty good sized gap right here. So I'm going to take out some of the excess metal here, shorten the gap a little bit, and I think that's going to bring everything back into square. So hang in there with me if you want, and we're going to look at some grinding.
Alright, we're going to have to move the camera.
Okay, we've got it squared up this way, and in all four corners, in fact. There's the fourth corner. Now we went down and made sure that we were reasonably level, and if you look down that edge there, you can see that it looks pretty damn good. Now, I had to put a couple washers in here. You can see the washers just kind of jack this one end up a little bit because that was off by about 1/8. But now I think we're doing just fine. So we got enough weight. We don't really have to tack it or hold it down or anything. So I think what I'm going to do is I've got the outside tacked right now. I'm going to come in and tack the inside, and that's going to lock us in permanently. And you know, not permanently. We could still pull it out if something happened. But we'll tack the insides, and then we'll do another final check and make sure nothing has pulled or tweaked up or tweaked down a little bit. And if that's the case, if everything's good, we'll go ahead and just weld this baby up. Okay, let's check and see how square we still are. If we're doing good or not. We're doing pretty good. Nice. Fair in the middle. And that looks good too. Now we'll check our level. Let's go ahead and turn the welder off for a moment. And we'll come in and one more time check the level. Come down and line up our camera from this front edge to that back edge, and that looks pretty squared up. I can't see it being too far off. Okay, we've kind of preheated our joints by doing that little tack weld. It didn't really super preheat it, but this will be the bottom, and then once everything is nice and hot, I'll flip this over, and we'll be able to do a really clean bead on the top where it's going to be seen. All right, well, let's just start and go from top to bottom here. I guess we need a ground. We'll start with a fresh stick. You notice I did a little bit of skip welding on top of that. Well, there's a pretty good sized gap in there, so I needed to weld a little bit and then let it cool, and weld it and cool. But I don't ever let it get past the so that it solidifies. I just let it cool just a little bit and then come back in and continue to weld, and that way the the welding or the metal continues to fuse without the fluxes getting in the way. I think we're going to end up with a pretty good weld from that. And the best part of it is we're going to heat up this whole corner so that when we come back to weld it on the other side, it'll be all preheated and nice and smooth and ready to take a nice clean weld. Not bad. That side took very nicely. A little bit of an undercut, but I think it's going to be